Hi everyone, Perez here, branding for the people, and I want to welcome you to my next interview. I have a special guest, my friend, who's also a client, but more importantly, he's a friend and he's an awesome human being. His name is Cole Hatter. He is an author, an award-winning speaker. He is a surfer. Obviously, he's wearing his board shorts, which you don't see on the interview right now, but he's all in true Cole fashion and on brand. He's dressed as he should, and he's on brand, chilling in his home in Southern California. So let me just bring on Cole, and we're going to interact. Because Cole, how's it going, man?
Good, bro. Good to see you, even though it's through a computer screen.
It's good. Well, I'm going to be seeing you really soon. Now, it's interesting. Cole and I, we immediately connected, and I'll talk about sort of we got connected through a mutual friend of ours. His name is Nick Unsworth. We've mentioned his name a couple times in different interviews that I've had, but Nick Unsworth of Life on Fire had connected us, and it was sort of like an instant connection sort of thing, kind of like a brother from another mother kind of connection. But more importantly, we got to do some work together, and I got to learn more about Cole's story, which I'm going to have him share. His story. At the same time, I also got to see him speak, see him in action. We've been ironically, in the same cities multiple times. And how often does that really happen? San Francisco,
Yeah, what are the
Vegas,
chances?
New York, right?
And San Francisco.
Yeah, and San Francisco. So that being said, Cole, why don't you, for the people listening in, so I have a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses who are part of our community, and they're interested in branding, and they're interested in building their businesses. They're interested in making an impact in the world and a lifestyle. So why don't you just share with people who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, let me expand a little bit on that bromance you were describing earlier, though. We didn't just hit it off, brothers from another mother. My wife actually wants to adopt Ree. So everybody knows, she always jokes around and says she's going to adopt Ree, and that we'll be family for sure. So
I still haven't seen those adoption papers, just FYI.
you know what? It's probably somewhere in my office, but we'll make sure to get those signed, notarized, and filed for you. All right.
Cool.
But all right, so a little bit of my story. God put it on my heart to help people young. Junior high school, I decided that I wanted to make some type of a positive impact in the world and kind of set my sights on firefighting. I said, what better way to give back than to assist or help my local community and actually get paid for it even better? I can make a career out of giving back. I was in high school when 9/11 happened. We all know where we were. And I was sitting there in my high school watching on TV the events unfold, very close to where you were, Ree, over at New York. And being in Southern California, I was so far away, I felt helpless, right? I mean, here are my fellow Americans going through that, and I'm about as far away in the country as I could have been. So that's where what was a thought or a desire became action. And I said, I don't just want to be a firefighter, I'm doing it. And started in high school, taking the evening classes I could, so that by the time I graduated, I had a head start. Moved to Seattle, Washington, where I did my academies, became an EMT, started pursuing paramedic school, getting all the prerequisites done for that, and I was a firefighter. And that was my plan. And I think that Mike Tyson says it best. We all have a plan till you get punched in the face. And what happens to me is I got in a car accident myself where, not getting into too much of the details, I had some pretty significant injuries. For a while, was in a wheelchair. Couldn't see out of this eye for a while, and I've since, thank God, had a 100% recovery. But that first year or so after the car accident, my future was uncertain, and I was 21 years old by that time, so it had been a few years firefighting. And that's when all the advice started rolling in of, hey, you're still young, go get your degree, go climb that corporate ladder, do your thing. And although that's a good fit for some, it wasn't the best fit for me. It just wasn't anything I ever wanted to do. Since 8th grade, I decided I wanted to help people. So the thought of going back to school, getting a different degree to do a job that I had never dreamed of doing, it didn't resonate with me. And I started looking around at things to do to make money while I was on path of finding my way of giving back. And at that year, real estate was doing very well. I was actually living at my parents' house at this time because my car accident was so bad. I mean, I kind of talked it down a little bit. My accident was so bad I had to be cared for. I literally had to move back with mom and dad. I had to be carried around. It was a mess. And so while I was still at mom and dad's house, learning to walk again and getting up and on my feet, literally, their next door neighbors were real estate people and were doing very well financially. I always joke around and say the the husband was a broker, the wife was an agent, and she was very part-time. She was more of a stay-at-home mom that just kind of showed real estate, very part-time, and she was making over $100,000 a year as a Orange County realtor, listing properties very part-time in Southern California. So I decided that I want to be a stay-at-home mom too, and I went and got my real estate license. And just kidding, but I did get my license, and that as a realtor became a real estate investor kind of organically. I ended up in a seminar where the man had some pretty compelling thoughts or argument towards the potential profits of being an investor compared to just being a realtor. I started that. That was in June of 2005, where I filed my articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State of California, became an official business owner. I convinced my dad to be my business partner, and that was over 9 years ago now. And what was kind of ignorance on fire at first has developed and grown into being a pretty profitable venture for us. We've had our bumps and bruises, 2008, 2009, the economy's crashing, real estate's crashing, but we positioned ourselves in a way that even though we were knocked down, we could still get back up. And I've had some tremendously successful years as real estate investors. We've invested to date in 7 states around the country. We focus right now on 4. And it's been great. And as a result of having success and some notoriety in the real estate investment world, I was asked to start speaking on stages to teach people and share my journey with them of how I got from where I was to where I am. And that exploded. And now I am regularly speaking. In fact, I leave tomorrow to go to Dallas. And like you've heard from Ree, coincidentally, when I was speaking in San Francisco, he was there. Speaking in Las Vegas, he was there. Speaking in Times Square, he lives in New York. So it was kind of cool that as I'm just randomly being asked to speak in different places, he happened to at that same day or weekend be there at the same time. And it's been a great time.
Stalking you, looking for those adoption.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of what takes up the majority of my time right now is I'm running my businesses still. I'm speaking on the weekends, but my number one and most important job is being as best I can be husband to my wife and father to my daughter. And so I always say that I'm all about living life to the fullest, enjoying life, being fully present in my family's life, and then around that, whatever I got to do to make money, which is actually doing pretty well. This is actually, I'll keep the numbers anonymous, but Ree, this is my biggest year yet. And last year was my biggest financial year ever. Sweet. And this year, as of September, I did what I did last year. So right now, this is all the new record to break next year. And a lot of that has to do with just the clarity that you and I talked about and being focused in my vision. So even though I'm a dad, husband first, business and money second, it's still by September, I've made more money than I ever have in my whole life. So these next quarter and a half of the last quarter and the last of the third quarter is all the new record to break next year. So it's pretty cool.
All right. So first of all, Cole, you're being super humble with your story. I actually know some things about you. I obviously spent an entire day with you learning your life path and your story and sort of how you got to be the successful person that you are today. But just for the listeners listening in, Cole is more than just the success that he has, and he's very humble in terms of like sharing his numbers, not sharing his numbers, whatnot. But he has a huge heart, and he gives back in a big way. And he's really not all about promoting the good things that he does as much. I mean, he does, but then it's not like a marketing thing for him. There's a lot of people that do good things, but it's for like an agenda or it's for marketing. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm generalizing, but one thing I love about Cole is that he is genuinely and authentically a good-hearted person, and he really cares about other people. And he's all about living life fully, thriving in life, making more money than you need so that you could do all the things that you want to do and be able to give back at the same time.
Right.
So we're going to get a little bit more into that. So Cole, let's actually go back to that time when we met. Like, you were doing some work. You actually have a podcast now, and at the time, let's take people back to the time when we first met, and you were considering going through the branding process, or maybe you weren't considering it because there's a lot of people that aren't even aware of branding,
sure,
or they are and they have some degree of it. So why do you think we got connected?
Well, that's one thing to point out is that I had no idea what branding and the difference between branding and marketing was. So I have a very crystal clear idea now. So that was a huge part of when, as you mentioned, Nick said, "Hey, you got to reach out to this guy Ree and talk to him about your brand." I was like, what is a brand compared to marketing compared to?"
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't know my brand. What really spurred us is after 9 years of doing real estate, I appreciate what the industry has done for me. We've done very well at it. Like I said, have gotten a lot of notoriety and really respect in that community, but it was never what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people.
Right.
And just while I was in the mend of getting back on my feet, saw that real estate was profitable and did it, and then blinked, and now it's 9 years later, and I don't regret a minute of it. But as I 29 turned the 30, and now I've got my 30s, 40s, and 50s, I said, okay, I gave 21 to 30 doing exclusively real estate investing for the most part, and some other like angel investing and venture capital stuff, but all in the investing umbrella. And very privately in my own way, like you said, my wife and I, whether it be with our church volunteering or even taking, some trips, we've gone on anywhere from a week to 3 week long trips to parts of Africa, like just us and our own family giving back in our own way. I wanted to do that on a grander scale and get back to, my core root of the way I was wired since high school or junior high school of wanting to give back. And so kind of seeking for more, right? I was financially set, and without sharing the numbers, my wife and I have been very, well, from the outside looking in, it looks pretty fabulous, but compared to what we're making, we live very frugally. People that, typically, unfortunately, make more money, spend more money, and are just broke at a higher level because now they've got 3 Ferraris and 25 houses to figure out how to pay for. And my wife and I set boundaries very early. So we don't really have any financial strain at all. And earlier this year, starting off 2014, I said, okay, since I don't have to worry about making money, now don't think that I'm such a gazillionaire that I can just float around on a boat the rest of my life. I still need to work, but making money isn't a focus anymore. That's all taken care of. Sure. So what do I want to make my focus? And it was getting back to my roots of giving back. So I went in kind of this soul search of what does that look like? I enjoy real estate. It's profitable, but it's not my passion. I don't wake up in the morning excited to go flip a house. Doesn't get my heart racing. What are the things that do get my heart racing? And in that search and that journey, I was connected to 4 people before I met you. A gentleman that introduced me to a gentleman that introduced me to Nick, that then introduced me to you. Right. And that was all in this search of finding people who appeared to be on track of them living within their passions, and really being excited about the work they were doing that was bringing in money, and saying, okay, so, on your website, and when I hear you on your podcast, or when I've talked to you at breakfast, you are making money and you're loving what you do at the same time. I'm making a ton of money and I enjoy it, but it doesn't make my heart race what I'm doing. Right. So how do I blend the two? And in that search of trying to figure out who I am, Nick Unsworth is like, dude, you need to figure out your brand, talk to Ree. And that's when we sat down, and I still have it to this day. I've not erased a single letter. I wish this wasn't my computer monitor so I could turn it a little bit. But right here on this wall is the 5x5 whiteboard that we used in our VIP day that is still covered in your handwriting. That anytime I'm kind of getting off track, this is home office for me. I've got my 2 monitors here, my keyboard, and anytime I get lost, I just lean back like this and I start reading what you and I covered to remind me of who I am and what I'm trying to create. And with the opportunity that's in front of me, saying, okay, is this thing that I'm considering in alignment with that? And a lot of times it is, and a lot of times it's not. And so this is kind of my compass pointing at north of business, at least, right? And so it's been really helpful, and just identifying who I am in the world. And one of the greatest things, and I don't know that I've even told you this in all the times that we've hung out, because outside of the professional VIP day, we've had 20 days of just being bros and still talking about branding and life because we're both passionate about it, right? Yeah. And one of the greatest helps that maybe I've shared this with you that you did for me was in addition to finding my brand, figuring out what I'm not. That was important because I had all these ideas when you came to my house in April of what I thought I'd want to do and what I thought from the outside looking in sounded good. But then in getting clarity with you, deciding that's not in alignment with what I want to do. And it's, although looks like a nice shiny object, it's actually pulling me off of my path of what I'm supposed to be doing. So equally as important to finding what I should be doing, I got clear on what I shouldn't be doing as well. And, we met in April, and as of recording this, it's November, and it's been a fun, whatever that is, 7 months or so since we've had a chance to chat.
Well, okay, so I'm definitely going to go in deeper in there. There's so much in what you just said. So just to connect back in April, right? So that was just in April. Now, just for the listeners, because I have to do a lot of education as well in terms of what is branding, because it is such a mostly misunderstood topic. But prior to going through the branding process, what was branding? What did that mean to you? And then what does it mean to you now?
To me, I felt like branding was color scheme. I thought it was logo. I thought it was image. I thought a brand was just image. It's the yellow arches, that's McDonald's, and
Right.
that green circle with the woman or siren on it, that's Starbucks. I thought that was branding, but that's actually not branding. It's a piece of the brand, but it's not what the brand is. And so that was my thought at first. And what the master himself taught me is that marketing is what you're telling people, branding is how you're making people feel. And that's huge. And I actually steal some of your content now on stage, Reed, but I do give you credit, just so you know. And I always use this as an example. Marketing is what you're telling people, branding is how you're making them feel. And so let's compare Motel 6 to the Four Seasons franchise.
Sure.
Their marketing is the exact same. You need a place to stay. We have a bed. We have showers, right? Motel 6 and the Four Seasons have the exact same marketing. Like, you need a place to stay. Come stay with us. We got you. But do you feel different when you're imagining staying in a Motel 6 versus staying in a Four Seasons? Well, yeah, the Four Seasons, it feels like a totally different experience than you'd have at the Motel 6, even though they do the exact same thing.
That's right.
But the Four Seasons is such a richer, deeper brand. That's branding. And what the Four Seasons has done over their time of history of being a business has created that richness, that brand around their hotel rooms that Motel 6 has created a different brand on purpose. This isn't to disrespect or knock Motel 6, but their brand on purpose is a different feel to attract different clientele for different reasons. And so, but they're both going to advertise the same. They're both going to market the same. They're both going to have logos. They're both going to do print ad. They're both going to do all types of media of saying, you need somewhere to stay with us. Sure. But their brand, their feeling's totally different. And so that's what I finally learned that branding is.
Good. Well, you are an excellent student.
Thanks.
Now, so that being said, I love that you dropped that in there in terms of brand being about experience, because, people don't remember what you do for them. They remember how you make them feel, right? So my next question, and actually this is kind of like off script in terms of what I intended to ask you at this moment, but okay, so you mentioned Four Seasons, you mentioned like hotel chains, then a lot of times people talk about Apple and Starbucks and Target and all these Tiffany, all these big brands, right? But we're talking to entrepreneurs like you and me, right? So my question is, well, how can entrepreneurs benefit from this same line of thinking of building a brand versus like all the marketing and advertising and print ads or whatever, or if you're building an online business, Facebook ads? But how can entrepreneurs benefit, or can entrepreneurs benefit from it?
Yeah, so I'll just share, each person in their own way, whatever their business and brand is around, because I know you work with a lot of different clients, of all different types. We're under the umbrella of entrepreneurship, but we all in our own industries, niches, etc. So for me, what it's done is it got me, I wouldn't be able to make people feel a certain way unless I knew my brand to begin with. I wouldn't know how to position myself in the marketplace and who my ideal demographic was unless I knew at the core of who I was. And while I'm to create an avatar, there's a lot of different words. It's an avatar, it's your demographic, it's your niche, it's your whatever you want to call it. But the people, my target audience, who would see me and say, I connect with this guy, I want to learn from him, or I want to do business with him, or whatever your product is. I want to read their books, I want to come to their boot camps, whatever your people that are watching this video are doing. Until I was crystal clear on who I was as a brand, I had no way to translate that into a feeling for my audience. And so I needed to know who I am and what I'm trying to do and be clear on it, because if you don't know who you are, then you're going to want to try to cater towards everyone. And when you're trying to advertise to everyone, no one's listening.
Sure.
You need to figure out exactly what you stand for and draw those lines in the sand of, here's what I do, here's what I don't do, here's who I am, here's who I'm not, and stay there. And you know what? 80% of the people might say, it's not my brand. But now that you have this 20%, they're going to love you, they're going to be loyal to you, and you'll make a better impact or money or whatever it is that you're going after. Raise more money if you're a nonprofit by having this portion of the population that are raving diehard fans versus trying to be something that everybody wants. And how that helped me as an entrepreneur in my niches that I'm in, that you helped me brand, is once I was clear on who I was, then it became easier to translate that message into a perception that makes people feel a certain way. If I didn't know who I was, I wouldn't know what to tell people about me. And then I would just be like, oh, what do you want to hear to like me? Well, here's what I do. But Bob over here, I got to tell him something different. Just be crystal clear on who you are. Apple does that. All the big successful brands do that. And bam, it's worked well for them.
Cool. Perfect. Love that answer. And it's so funny because people are like, wow, I can't wait to work with you because I get to really get clear on who I am. And I was like, man, we got to figure that out. But actually, that is kind of my gift, if you will. And I say that with a healthy ego. I mean, that's part of why I do what I do. You know, people say, oh, I do branding. But, you know, really what I do is the work that I do is very transformative. It really is helping people get clear on who they are and who they're not. Yep. So that they then can go and kind of have the impact or have more clarity and direction and focus on in terms of how they're going to serve, you know, whether you're a service-based entrepreneur or you have a brick and mortar business. But so I love that you mentioned that of getting clear on who you are and who you're not. And that it does make decisions, because you mentioned something earlier that I'll connect with what you just said, which is this shiny object syndrome. It's like, well, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could get into this. And it's like, because this might be true for some of the other people that's aligned with their brand. But if you're not clear on who you are, it's very easy as an entrepreneur to get sucked into all these different things.
Totally. And as you grow, right, launching the podcast and as I speak on stage, you know, I'm in front of tens of thousands of people, right? So the more your brand grows, the more shiny objects get thrown at you. That's right. And so then you need to be very careful and clear on what you accept and what you don't. So it all starts, I'm going to say that your brand's your foundation and your business builds from there. Perfect. And if you don't have your foundation set in stone, like can't even be watery, it needs to have, it's set, it's done, the cement has cured, so to speak. That's what you're going to build your business on, is that foundation. And you know, part of foundation could be argued you're you know, from the boring side of the structuring of your entities and all that, which is what I talk about on stage, but this is important. But then to obviously your brand as well, outside of filing, you know, paperwork with attorneys and CPAs, what is it that you're trying to create? And then that's how you build your business on top of it. So
I love that you're bringing it to analogies with real estate, because most people think that branding is just sort of the interior design or the paint of the house, right? Or the, I don't know, maybe even just the furniture. What we're really about doing is creating the sort of infrastructure. We're kind of like the architects.
Yeah, I like that. Architects.
The architects of the brand. And then it makes it easier.
Write that one down.
Write that one down. You have that foundation, you know that it's obviously going to be, you have a stable foundation to build on it. And if you wanted to extend your house, i.e. extend your brand into other areas, you know that you have a solid foundation to be able to do that. Or you know, well, actually I can't extend it in this area because that's not really true to that's core to the foundation, right? So right. I love that metaphor. It's just branding is the same way. I kind of worked on the foundation. And to be honest, we're only talking 7 months out, but a lot of my clients, I'm actually doing these interviews like a year later, 2 years later, and it takes a life on its own. Right. And this is really just the beginning for you. But so let's actually just go back to, you mentioned this sort of whiteboard, right? Because people can't see it. Most people really can't see brand strategy. They can't touch it. So sometimes when you can't touch something, it makes it harder to invest in it. But let's talk about what that day was like for you. I actually went to Cole's house. I know he mentioned that I'm from New York, and at the time I was kind of in San Diego, and now I'm actually in Southern California. Sold my place in New York, but so we'll get to hang out a bit more. But I actually went to Cole's home and got inside his environment. So walk people through what a day is like with Perez, branding for the people, and going through the whole branding process.
Cool. So yeah, you showed up. It was awesome. Knew I had a little girl, so he brought some of his brand stuff, some colored pencils for her, right? Started schmoozing my ladies, which, you know, this is the first time actually meeting Ree in person, and there's no way to better get a W in my book than schmooze.
So what was that day? So we're going back to, so walk us through the day.
Okay. All right. So Ree shows up, and one way to definitely get a W in my book is to schmooze the lady. So Ree knew that I had a little daughter. He brought her some branding for the people, colored pencils, and knew I had a wife, brought her some chocolates for the people, right? Everything true to your brand. So I was already like, all right, this guy's, he's getting a good spot in my heart, taking care of the ladies. And so we actually went up and hung out in my movie theater for the whole day, which was cool. That's one of my favorite parts of the house. And we had this room as an option, and on the other side of this room, I have my creative room, which has most of my guitars in it, and just it's where we just go to jam. I thought that's where we'd hang out, but he's like, no, let's go in the movie theater. And so that was cool. And the thing that I thought was probably most notable throughout the day of what I was, I don't want to say impressed with, but which I definitely noticed is Ree kind of became me, right? Like later on in the afternoon, I was like trying to be hospitable. And I'm like, Ree, do you want a beer or something? He's like, would you drink a beer right now? It's like, yeah. What kind do you want? It's like, what kind would you have? So he was just really getting in my space, from drinking the beer I drank to even when we ordered food at the restaurant, like whatever your favorite restaurant is, and got inside my space, which was cool. And we actually went for 11 hours that day. I don't know if that's typical. I mean, we walked around my lake and stuff, so I don't know that 11 hours is typical for somebody who might think that sounds intimidating, but we were just in such a flow and we hit it off so well that literally it was 11 hours from the time he sat in my movie theater seat to the time we shook hands and said, man, this is a powerful day. And it was pretty cool. So that was on the surface of what it looked like. But most importantly, again, it was just re-hearing me out as I just vomited on him all this stuff of what I wanted to be and do with my career. And I'm making great money with what I'm doing, so people think I'm crazy to walk away from that. I don't want to walk away from that, but how do I add something that's more meaningful? I don't want to be 50 and in my career as the real estate guy. I want to so how do I get the significant and the purpose behind? I'm just throwing up, right, with my crazy ADHD mind. And again, I wish I could pull this off the wall, but Ree was able to take that and take these jumbled ADHD thoughts and, I don't want to say make it very linear, but make it very, one thought after the other, which is not how mine works. And just to put my wants, I mean, there's the who's, the what's, the background, the change I want to make, what's missing, all this stuff, and create a brand out of it. And I think the biggest success is something that, for those of you that may find me or follow me, will be seeing beginning of next year, was these 4 quadrants that Ree said, what I'm hearing you say you want to do, people, is this. And it was like, right then, the clouds parted, the sun came down, there were angels singing, playing harps, and he just drew this thing on the screen. It's right here, just with a Sharpie, not a Sharpie, a dry erase on a whiteboard of these 4 quadrants, which has now become my entire brand. And it's call it a logo or an ideogram or whatever, of encompassing everything that was jumbling around with just 2 very simple lines and 4 words. And actually working to write a book now that is based around that concept. So it was my idea. It was my concept that Ree was able to take out of my mind and put into a visual representation that was simple. 2 lines, boom, there's 4 quadrants. Here's what you're saying you want to do, Coles. Take people from here around to here. And it's like, yeah, it's exactly what I want to do. Thank you. And I've had it drawn into a beautiful logo now. It's going to be who I am.
Wait, it's a logo now? I didn't see that part.
Oh, it's not done yet. You will see it.
Okay. Cool.
But I took a picture of what you drew with your hand and said, make this, color and like a
it's like a chart.
I don't want to call it a logo,
it's
but
not
make
logo,
it
it's more like an info, a chart or a diagram.
Yeah, but digitally done, not hand done, but like just something that I can put in a book or on a website or whatever.
All right, hold on. We're just checking here because the connection got a little bit bad on your end. Okay. So that's awesome. So Cole, people obviously can't see the chart, and quite honestly, well, it's actually called, in branding terms, it's called a perceptual map. And why I'm sharing that for the people listening in, just so you understand what these quadrants are, I talk about positioning. So before you actually create a logo, before you go and market, before you go and advertise, it's very useful to be clear who you are and where you're positioned in the world, or vis-a-vis your competitors or other players or other people who might be talking about the same thing that you're talking about. And so it's kind of a positioning map, a perceptual map. There's different words for it. And so everyone's map is different. And part of the value that we bring is kind of really mapping that out so it simplifies and organizes, particularly someone who has the ADHD, all of their thoughts, right? So obviously, Cole, we were talking about this platform, right, or this framework or this map. And so talk to us about how this has impacted or informed the book that you're writing now. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Yeah, Bree, and you'll probably remember it's like 2:30 in the morning. I was in Long Island, New York, and my book editor was hammering me. She's like, I need this many words by this time because she needed to stay on schedule. And I was at a brick wall that I just couldn't get through because I'm not trying to be some author. I'm just trying to tell the story that I went through to inspire others to do the same of getting on, path of living life of purpose, etc. And so I'm trying to figure out how to take my story and translate it into something that people would want to read and that will actually do something. I couldn't figure out how to do that. And it was literally 2:30 in the morning, and I sent you a text, Ree, and I said, you just saved my sanity. Thank you. And I sent it. I'm sure you were asleep because sometime the next day you're like, wow, what happened? And it was the idea just popped in my mind. That little, whatever you call it, ideogram, logo, that image that you made is what the book's going to be about. And it's going to be there so people can see it. And I'm going to have the conversation of how, and for those that don't know what we're talking about, you'll see it. The four quadrants represent 4 different places in my life I was in, from the top left, bottom right to upper right. And from my personal experience of going around that wheel to get into the top right, I'm then telling other people how wherever they find themselves in that quadrant to get to the top right as well.
So for me, what that translates to is saving yourself time and money and energy, quite honestly. I'd say time, money, and energy. And so even just the idea of all of that clarity and that knowing of who you are and who you're not and who you affiliate with and who you're not, that alone, if that saves you time and money, that's almost like gets you the return on your investment or worth the investment. Now, a lot of people go off and to do something with saving that time and they're more focused. So that which you focus on grows. So now you could focus on the things that's most important to you and what's most aligned with your brand.
Totally.
So, okay, well, obviously, I wanted to share you with the community. I wanted to share your story, and there's so much more to learn about you, Cole. And I just want to be respectful of your time as well, because I know you are a jet setter and you're a big speaker and you're sought after and so forth. But any tips or advice that well, 2 things, and then we'll wrap up. But any tips or advice that you would give people who are considering going through the branding process?
Okay, so first tip is 1, everybody needs it. I wasn't sure if I did. I knew I needed help and clarity, but I didn't understand enough about branding to know that I need it. Like, how do you, I was just watching the Steve Jobs movie, and Ashton Kutcher obviously is enacting Steve. And as he's getting turned down on one of the phone calls, as he's frustrated, pacing in front of his parents' house, he says, how do you know that they're not going to want something that they don't even know exists, or something along those lines of, people are like, dude, I don't want computers. And no one's going to want computers. And his response is something like, how can you say they don't want something that they don't even know they need yet, or they don't even know it exists to know they don't want it? That was me with branding. I didn't know enough of what branding was to know that I needed it. I knew that I needed clarity. I knew that I wanted to be more fulfilled. I didn't necessarily need to make more money, even though we as entrepreneurs are always striving to get better, which usually means more money. I was set financially, and with what I make, I'm in a great spot, right? But I knew that I wanted more fulfillment, and that I wanted to get goosebumps with the work I was doing and not just paychecks, right? Sure. Paychecks are cool, and I've gotten good at making those, but I wanted to make goosebumps for myself at the same time. That's the best way to explain it. And so once my eyes were kind of open to what branding was, it's like, oh, now I understand enough about it to know I need it. Right. And so I think one piece of advice for people is, explore more through the content that Rhea is pumping out there for free, or just in general of what branding is, because you need to understand what it is and what it does for your business to know that you need it. And I wasn't there yet. Again, back to the Ashton Kutcher, I was somebody in the 70s that didn't even know what a computer was to know I needed one. And now the world exists on computers. Branding is something that maybe the startup entrepreneur, now big Fortune 500s, which you have a history of working with, they know that their business relies on it. It's not a question of if or should we, it's when and how are we. Right. And for startup entrepreneurs, I think the biggest focus for somebody who's getting started or has even been in the business for a few years is just, upping the bottom line. How do I make more money? How do I make more money? Branding, yeah, that sounds fine. We'll get around to that. But how do I make more money? How do I make more money? And you don't make more money unless you know your brand. So that's one piece of advice.
That's a huge one, though. There's a direct correlation to the money you make and the clarity on your brand. I would just want to highlight that because most people really think it's kind of like a cost that later one day we'll invest in, but it's an investment to help you make more money. So anyway.
Totally. And it's a tax write-off.
There you go. Okay, what else? I interrupted you.
Oh, no worries. I mean, I was just, that's the biggest piece of advice right there is just know that you need it. And then, another piece of advice is go through the process. Don't take shortcuts. Yeah. Mine was probably very frustrating for you, Ree, because as I originally, and I'll give a little bit of details. I originally sat down with Ree because I wanted to create a personal brand around myself.
Right.
But the direction we were going would have made me like a business coach. And that wasn't a fit for me. Nothing against business coaches. I have 4 right now, right? For real estate and everything I'm doing. So I love that. But as we were building that brand, I was like, me personally, it's not a fit for me to be on the phone with people and helping coach them through. I love doing that into the masses on stage. That's fun. That's what I do. It's a blast. But actually sitting one-on-one, like it wasn't what I wanted. So even as we were going through the branding process, I remember a phone call we had in San Francisco where I'm like, dude, everything we've been working on, I'm over it, right? Like I don't want to be a business coach. I don't want to build some big list and then sell info products. And like, that's what I've hired you to help me create. And who am I going to be? That's not what I want to do. This is who I want to be. And it was extra work for you. It was extra work for me, but it got me where I want to be. So the second piece of advice is once you understand what branding is and know that you need it, be willing to go through the steps because that erased about 60 days worth of work for you and I. I think we were like at day 50 something. Yeah. Where I said, hey, Ree, these 50 days have been huge because they've shown me what I don't want to do. All the progress of creating me as like a business coach and force to be reckoned with, I don't want that, I found out. I don't want to build these huge lists of people that are asking to pay me money to coach them. It's not who I want to be. I want to be more of like the Richard Branson where I have my own brick and mortar businesses, which I do, and I'm a kind of inspirational author speaker that helps other entrepreneurs. And I'm sure Richard Branson does some coaching, but not a Tony Robbins whose business is to be a coach.
Right.
More of like, that's who I thought I was going to be. I'm a speaker, a coach. I don't want to be a Tony Robbins. I want to be more of a Richard Branson where I own an airline company and a record label and actual businesses that just inspires the community. And when I made that switch from being branded as the next Tony to being branded as the next Richard Branson, which these are extreme examples. I don't expect to be a multi-billionaire like Richard, but hey, if it's in God's plan, what'll happen? But the point is making that leap of saying, I don't want to build a brand around me being a coach, just a brand around me being an entrepreneur that is an inspiration, like a Tony Hsieh of Zappos or whatever.
Right.
That was my fit, and that's where I am now. And as a result of that, I was turning down startup opportunities of investing in companies because I want to be a coach. I didn't need any more businesses. I needed coaches. But now getting that clarity, I've invested in 2 or 3 businesses now that are so much fun, that are huge, that I'm actually getting involved in. Instead of just writing the check, I'm actually going to be a part of creating those brands. And some are as fun as we're going to go to China because we're manufacturing a new product, which I can't talk about yet because it needs patents and stuff. Right. But that's fun for me. And I'll inspire people on stage, etc. But the second piece of advice is be willing to go through the work of getting clarity on your brand. Everyone wants to go to the gym and have a 6-pack day one. You got to sweat. You got to be sore. You got to diet. You got to give up desserts. And then fast forward 30, 60, 90 days, you have a rock solid body. Yeah. Be willing to put in the work in your brand as well because you don't just sit with Ree for a day and then all of a sudden you have this multi-billion-dollar brand. It's going to be work to get there. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice. Number 1, know you need it. And you might not know you need it yet. That's like people on the computers in the 70s. And then number 2, once you've made the commitment, do the work. It'll be worth it.
Go through the process. I love that. Great tips, great advice. So if people want to learn more about you, Cole, and find out about all the amazing things that you're doing and things that you're allowed to share, and maybe when you're allowed to share some of these top secret ventures that you're doing, we'll share those as well. But where should we send people to learn more about Cole Hatter?
Certainly not top secret, just patent pending. You can just go to colehatter.com. I actually need to update it with all the business I'm working on. And I just threw my wife a huge party this last week, and that was a huge focus. But this book. But colehatter.com, and that's probably it. There's Facebook on there. There's Twitter. There's Instagram. Yeah. They can follow me in my daily life through that. And then my business ventures, like my book launch, basically the publishing company that took me under their wing, who's publishing my book, are basically going to take over colehatter.com. And I don't even know what's going to be on it, but it's going to be about book promotion and how to get it. And so that'll be cool. And that's how, they'll follow me.
That's good. So that's Cole Hatter, ColeHatter.com.
colehatter.com.
Go check out Cole. get on his list, stay connected with Cole, and learn more about him. We've really scratched the surface in terms of Cole's story on this interview, but my intention was to kind of add another layer about one of my VIP clients and a friend and a colleague and someone who I respect and admire, and what he's doing and how he's played big, how he's becoming a game changer in his own world and in his field. And hopefully you got inspired by some of the things that we shared today, and that was my intent. So with that being said, I want to thank you for listening in. I want to thank you, Cole, for your time today.
My pleasure, bro.
And it's not really a goodbye, because I'm going to see you really soon. We're going to hang out soon, and we'll reconnect, of course, with Cole in a later interview. You never know. But that being said, for everyone else, live life abundantly. Thank you for the work that you're doing as an entrepreneur, and we'll stay in touch and stay tuned for the next interview.
Right on, man. I'll see you soon.
See ya.